You know, for more than 1,000 years, there's been one symbol that just screams Norse gods, right? Thor's hammer. We think of it as this icon of just unimaginable strength, a weapon that could literally level mountains and slay giants. But here's the thing, that's only half the story. Not even.
I mean, look at this. This is the hammer we all think we know. This mighty, unstoppable weapon. But what if I told you its real purpose was way more complex, and honestly, in a lot of ways, way more powerful than just smashing things? So where do we even begin to look for the real answers?
Okay, our first stop has to be the original source material. We're talking about the epic poems and the sagas, the stuff written down centuries ago. I mean, this is the closest thing we're ever going to get to actual witness testimony from the Viking Age.
So the hammer's name is Mjolnir. And yeah, let's be clear. In the myths, it is an absolutely devastating weapon. Thor, he's the protector of Asgard, the god's home, and Mjolnir is his go-to tool for keeping the forces of chaos, the giants, in check. But that's just where the story starts. And right out of the gate, we find something, well, pretty unexpected. Take a look at this. It's an inscription from a 1,000-year-old stone in Denmark. And it doesn't ask Thor to smash anything. It asks him to hallow the runes. Hallow, as in to bless them, to make them sacred. This is our first huge clue, that the hammer was about something more spiritual, more protective, not just destruction. And believe it or not, the hammer's role gets even bigger, showing up in life's most important moments. There's this one famous myth, right, where Thor's hammer gets stolen, so to get it back, he has to disguise himself as the goddess Freya and pretend to marry a giant king. It's wild, but at the peak of the ceremony, what do? They bring out the hammer and place it in the bride's lap to bless the marriage. It was actually a symbol of fertility, of making the marriage sacred. And if you thought that was strange, it gets even wilder. In another story, Thor kills his own magical goats for dinner for himself and a family he's staying with. He just tells them, hey, just put all the bones on the goat skins. So the next morning, he just raises Mjolnir, hallows the bones, and the goats spring right back to life, totally unharmed. I mean, just think about that for a second. The exact same hammer that could flatten a mountain was also a symbol of resurrection, of the cycle of life itself.
So, okay, the ancient texts give us all these incredible clues. But what about actual physical proof? For that, we've got to turn from the old poems to the ground right beneath our feet, where archaeologists have literally been digging up the answers.
And what they found is, well, it's just astonishing. Not one Mjolnir, but thousands of them. Turns out, people all over the Viking world wore these little hammer pendants, kind of like good luck charms or amulets. And unlike that single standard issue version we see in the movies, these are all incredibly different. They're made of iron, silver, amber. Some are super simple, others are crazy ornate. This wasn't just one symbol. It was a deeply, deeply personal one.
So the big question is, why? Why did so many people suddenly start wearing these? Well, the key seems to be the timing. This whole trend just exploded right around the time Christianity was spreading through Scandinavia. You see, as Christians started wearing the cross to show their faith, a lot of Vikings chose the hammer. It became more than just a prayer to a god. It was a public statement. It was a declaration of who you were, a symbol of the old ways in a world that was changing fast.
Now, for decades, all this evidence we're talking about, the texts, the thousands of amulets, it was all just scattered, little pieces of a giant puzzle. But now, 21st century technology is giving us a whole new way to see the big picture.
Okay, so researchers have put together something called the Itri database. And yes, it's named after the dwarf, who, according to the myths, actually forged the hammer. What it does is bring together all the data on hundreds of these archaeological finds from all over Europe, all into one single place. For the first time ever, we can analyze them all at once.
And when you take all that data and plot the dates on a timeline, a really stunning pattern just jumps out. Look at this. There's this massive spike in the creation of these hammer amulets right between 900 and 1100 AD. Now that's the absolute heart of the Viking Age. And it just so happens to be the exact same period when Christian missionaries were most active in Scandinavia. The data basically confirms the theory. The hammer became a symbol of cultural identity, a direct response to the cross.
And the database doesn't just stop at a timeline. It also lets us map all of these finds, showing us the geographic hotspots of this practice. You can see right here on the map exactly where the symbol was most popular. Sweden is way out in front. Then you've got Denmark, the UK, and Norway. We can literally, for the first time, map the strongholds of the old faith across the entire Viking world.
All right, so when we put everything together, the clues from the ancient texts and the hard evidence from modern data, what's the final verdict? What was the real story of Thor's hammer?
Well, what it all tells us is that Mjolnir was never, ever just one thing. It was absolutely a weapon against chaos and giants, for sure, but it was also a sacred tool, used to hallow things, to bless marriages and runes. It was a symbol of life, of resurrection. And maybe, just maybe most importantly, for the everyday person who wore one around their neck, it was a proud, public declaration of their faith and their identity.
Think about it. The hammer's meaning has evolved so much, from a god's multi-purpose tool to a pendant of pagan identity, and now to a superhero's icon. It's been constantly reforged in our collective imagination for 1,000 years. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What will it symbolize 1,000 years from now?